I'm going to start off with an introduction, go through a little bit of the setup, and I promise that'll be as deep and as kind of techy as I'll get. I'm going to go through like a lot of helpful features. So if you have questions of about any of those as I'm going through them, feel free to let me know or enter them into the question panel. And then after that, we'll go over the benefits and then the Q&A. All right, so as Ashley said, my name is Lori Nicolanti. I'm a project manager here at ProMedSource. I've been working in information technology for about 30 years. I started off as a programmer. I've done a lot of DBA work and a lot of development work, and eventually I moved into IT management. And I spent, goodness, probably like over 20 years managing software development, both in-house and as a consultant. And during that time, I realized that I like IT project management. I enjoy the full life cycle of an IT project. So I decided to focus on the PM part of my career. So I still dabble in coding a little bit, but not as much as I used to. So with everything going on right now, more and more people are starting to work from home. It's actually become the new normal for a lot of people that were previously used to going into the office every day. So in order to be able to stay productive, a lot of offices need to change the way that they communicate so that they can still stay connected with everybody. We need a way to set expectations and get everyone on the project aligned. And the right software tools can make this transformation a lot easier. If it's new to you, or maybe you're already working from home and these tools can improve the way that you do it. So why Jira and Confluence? So during my career, I've worked in various project management and IT project applications. I finally settled on Jira and Confluence. I found that I'm able to do everything I need to do with these tools. Overall, they just work well for me. Jira and Confluence were created to work together, and they do it very well. When used correctly, you can manage all the parts of a project for all the levels. So you can do it from the dev team all the way up to the stakeholders. Everybody can get in there and see what they need to see. You have the ability, whether you want to focus on the details of a task and every single work breakdown, or you have the ability to roll that data up for a more high level, kind of like a spread out portfolio view. So what is Jira? So at a high level, Jira is more for the developers. They're the ones who are going to spend most of their time in Jira. When Jira was first introduced, everyone thought of it as like a bug tracking tool. It's definitely grown over the years, and it can do a lot more than just track bugs. While using it, a team can make sure they're working on all the tasks they need to work in. So they can see what they're supposed to work on and kind of go through there, and everyone else can track it. You can track features, you can track bugs, issues, even questions from users. Let's say you have clients, or whether your clients are outside the company or whether they're inside the company, other management and stakeholders, if they have questions, you can even track those within Jira. Pretty much a project is broken into tasks, and then the tasks are ordered by priority, they're estimated, they're assigned, and you do this all within Jira. So what is Confluence? Confluence is more like a wiki. It's used by the entire team, but primarily by the stakeholders. Confluence is kind of your go-to place to find any information about your project. So this way, if someone new's brought into your project, you should be able to point them to the Confluence space, and after they read it, they should have a pretty good idea of where your project is. They'll know who's involved and the current status of the project. It's definitely where you want to make sure you have all your documentation held, all your reporting is going to be there, a lot of your dashboards will be in Confluence, and you can customize it accordingly, and we'll go through some of that. So I wanted to touch on the setup and how to make sure the two applications can work together. This is probably as technical as I'll get in this, and I promise I'll try not to dive too deep into it. So like I said before, Jira and Confluence were made to work together. So when you're setting them up, you want to connect each of them so that they're integrated. Once they're connected, you can create Confluence pages when you're in Jira, and you can create tasks in Jira while you're in Confluence, and you don't have to worry about switching back and forth as much as, if they're not connected. You want to add links from each to make it easier for users to navigate between the two, and you can create templates in each of them so that once you get it set up the way you want it, you can create a template to be reused for all of your projects. I'm going to go through step by step for the setup in Jira. So you want to click on Pages. After that, you click Connect to Space. And once you're in there, you can select your space. You can start typing. It'll pop up for you, and you want to click your Confluence space. Once you do that, you're pretty much connected. Then in Confluence, you can also add space shortcuts. And this makes it easier for users to navigate between the two. You want to create a direct link for them. This way they're not, trying to remember URL, looking for your bookmark, looking through emails to find where you initially sent it to them. So in Confluence, you can do this by going to the left sidebar, clicking add a shortcut link and pasting the URL. You can also do the same thing within Jira. You can set up a shortcut in Jira and it'll show on the left-hand side in your main navigation. And you also want to add any other shortcut links that are relevant to your project. I usually add links like to the contracts in there, just anything that I know my users are going to be looking for that they might not need all the time, but this way they can at least find it once they're in there. You can set up direct links to make it easier for your users to navigate between the two. In Jira, you can do this by going to the left side toolbar and you click add item, you select the shortcut, and then you paste the URL. And then in Jira, you'll see a shortcut to your Confluence site. You can usually add multiple links in here too. So just like in Confluence, you can have a link to your shortcut to your contract, and to Jira, you can do the same thing in Jira and have the shortcut to Confluence or the contract or any other documentation that you want to send them to. All right, so here's kind of the fun stuff. So once you're in there, there's all kinds of customizations that you can do. So I usually start off, and I'm going to go through a lot of the customizations, different ideas for you to use. You can hopefully get some to take away out of this. What I usually do is I'll start with adding a team calendar. So every project should have a team calendar. This way you can track the dates and the times of like your meetings, when users are going to start UAT, when you're going to go live. You can even put your invoicing in there. Confluence works very well with iframes. On the picture I have here, what I've done is I've used an iframe and I've added a Google Calendar to the page. That way, whenever I create a meeting or I'm invited to one, I add it to this calendar. I can also do it using my regular calendar application. So I don't have to go in Confluence. I can use my regular calendar app, and then it's automatically updated in the iframe every time I add a meeting to it. This kind of gives me the ability, and I do this a lot. I create the page and then I forget about it. I just know that it's going to be updated as I go through and work on the project. I don't have to go back to this page every time a new meeting is created. I just use my regular calendar app, and then it reflects the changes that I make in my app. You can also set up multiple calendars to show on this page. So on a lot of projects, I'll have like the calendar about one project, and maybe the calendar, if it's a client and they have multiple projects going on with us, I'll have each project meetings and project deadlines and UATs and go live. I'll have those all in a different color. You can also put holidays in here, so holidays can show up in a certain color. You can customize it as much as you want. I usually try to, make it kind of themed around what the client colors are, but you can do it however you want to do it. Very handy, especially if there's multiple projects on the site, so everyone's on the same page. Stakeholders registry. So since the Confluence space is where all the information about your project is going to be kept, it makes sense to have the stakeholder registry in there too. What I do is I create a table, I add the relevant information for every person on the project. This can include the stakeholders, their names, subject matter experts, the dev team. It contains everyone's name, their role, their company, their contact information. We usually just use email. You can add a space for phone numbers in here too. I've done that in the past. Sometimes we also have multiple projects going on for a company at the same time. So if you need to, you can add a project column in here too. So if they're on multiple projects, you can add a project column, who, what, when, where, why. Sometimes it's common for stakeholders to, even if they're not a member of your project, if they're on another project within the company, they might kind of cross over. So this way, if you hear from them or if they show up in a meeting, brought in by somebody else, you know who you're talking to and you know what their role is. You can reference their title right away and know who they are. This can also be used throughout the project as new people join. So if there's a change in management, you can update this. You can customize it with different background colors, however you want to do it. I know I've taken over projects from other PMs, and if they don't have a stakeholder registry, I kind of have to spend a lot of time figuring out who it is that I'm talking to and who's on a project, who I need to reach out to for questions. You'll want to know who you have to reach out to for questions and meetings, and this is just quick and easy way to do it. It's amazing how many projects don't have stakeholder registries in them. What else? System and tech info. So since this is the wiki for the entire team, the dev team can also store their information in here too. So anything that they need, they can put information about their dev and production environments, any kind of process that we're going to follow for a project. Maybe they'll put like repository information on here, guidelines on estimating tasks, how the team's going to do it in case we get, dev team members roll on and roll off of projects throughout the course. Especially if you've got a project that's going to span a year or two, you're going to have multiple members rolling on and off this project. You want to give them this one place for them to go to for everything. And this way it makes setting up and onboarding for the dev team a lot easier if they go to one place and see where they can get the GitHub information, where they can get the repository information. It also has a lot of the URLs and the platforms that are used for testing. So the project plan. This is another use for iframes that we do quite often. Everyone always asks about the dates and when we're scheduled for go live. And this way you have it right in front of you when you need it. You can also transfer some of this information to the calendar, but I know a lot of times it's easier to break it down by the milestone, and you don't want to spend all this time entering this into the calendar, so you use the project plan for the timeline for the customer. Using a web-based application for project plan, every time I make an update to it, it's automatically reflected in Confluence. So there's no more, doing an export of my Microsoft project or whatever app you're using and adding it to Confluence. With the iframe, if you've got a web-based app, you can go ahead and it'll automatically update as you make your changes through the project. If you're not using a web-based application, you can always, go ahead and export it to a PDF, save it as an image, put it in there just so it's easier for people to view. Confluence does have features that allow you to display a PDF or an image on the page, but however you choose to display it, you can do it, without having to email them. This way, they're not looking for the most current version, and that's, that happens a lot. This way, every change is reflected, and there's no download. So the customer can go in here, the customer, the stakeholder, whoever is looking at it, even your dev team should be looking at it as well. They can look at it. There's no need for them to download and install anything to view it. It's just there. It's as simple as viewing a web page. So your deliverables. So every project has deliverables, and they're required in the contract. So when possible, I add those deliverables to Confluence. So for this one, I just use a table. I set it up. As they're completed, I fill in the date delivered. I can list, each deliverable in there, who's responsible for it. It's also kind of my own personal checklist. And for everybody on the team, everybody knows what's expected, what we have to turn in for this project. It's just an easy reference for the stakeholders that might not be involved in the day-to-day project activities. They can look at it, see where we are, and then they'll have the link to the documentation as well. So if they want to see what did we decide, the final round of theme designs will look like, they can click on there and see how it's going to look. So requirements. So before the development work starts and really gets rolling, you can create the requirements document in Confluence. Once the requirements for the project are approved, you can right-click on each requirement, and then you can automatically create a task in Jira. So this lets you to this is where they work well together, just an example of that. And it does save a lot of time. The more detailed you get with your requirements, and after you get sign-off from the client or from your stakeholders, you can go ahead and just create those requirements while you're in Confluence, looking at your requirement doc, rather than going into Jira and creating a story for each, or a task for each requirement. So you can do a lot of your breakdowns in here. Meeting notes. So you can capture all your meeting notes in Confluence. It gives you one place to store all of them. This gives you the capability to search through them. And it also, you can put your attendee list on there. Everyone's been through, like with a client or a stakeholder, or even just like a communication within your team where everybody remembers a different decision being made. As long as you capture that in your notes, if you captured that decision in your notes, you can search for it. So you search for it in Confluence, you can bring it up. It's just a lot easier than going through emails or searching through your own documentation and then resharing it with the team. You have something that was already distributed to everybody. They already saw it out there for everybody to view, and everyone gets on the same page about the decision. Even if they remember it differently, they can always look it up. So that brings us to notifications. So if you are keeping your meeting notes in Confluence, it automatically does the notifications for you. So you can go in there, you can tag a user using the @ sign. Once you do publish, once you're done with all your meeting notes and you hit publish, it'll go through and it'll send an email to everybody you have tagged on your meeting notes. If you go in later and you change your meeting notes, you can choose to redistribute these. In your notes, you can track the attendance. There's no more, you don't have to worry about remembering to email your notes to everybody afterwards. It's automatically done for you. It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So you don't have to do you can move on to your next task. You don't have to worry about stopping, formatting, and then emailing it to everybody. It's already done. So your action items. So during every meeting, there's always some action items that need to be worked on. If it's a productive meeting, there's always something that comes out of it that people have to work on. So if you use shortcuts, you can go ahead and create an open action item and then assign it to a user. So I did put some of the information on here of how to create a checkbox. So you use the open and close bracket, and it automatically creates this checkbox feature for you. Using the @ sign, you can start typing, hit the @ sign, start typing a user's name, select the user that you want, and then their name shows up automatically. Once their name shows up, they're tagged on that action item, and they're also going to be tagged in the meeting notes. So once you hit publish, they're going to go out and they'll get that notification. What I like to do, it's been really handy, is on the main meeting note page, the one above all the other meeting notes, kind of like the parent meeting note page, you can add a list of all the open action items for your team. So it'll only show the open action items. Once it's done, it won't show up on this list anymore. As you and your team complete an item, you can click this checkbox and then it'll be removed from the list. It definitely, I know for me, it makes my follow-up a lot easier because I don't want to have to go through, clicking on the notes, figuring out what still needs to be done, what somebody's done already. I can see right here that they've either done it or they haven't. And then as a user myself, or let's say Mindy's working on this and she's like, okay, I already did the first round of design. She can click that checkbox. It'll show up as done on the notes as well. And then it disappears from here. So it's kind of like a little mini dashboard for your action items. So a variation of the open action items on the meeting note page, which works per project, is the ability to create an open action item list for yourself, or you can create it for your team members. So I know, I have my own little page and my own little space on my page, and I can add a list of action items, and it'll span across all the projects in Confluence. It's not just one project at a time. So I can go through and look at my page and say, okay, on project A, I need to do this. On project B, I need to, create a meeting for discussion. I need to do certain things. And I did take a screenshot so you can see what it looks like after you check it off. And the next time I load that page, it'll be gone. So it's just my own personal accountability list. As I complete the items, I check it off, and then it won't show up, and my to-do list gets shorter until my next meeting. So customizing file list. So Confluence lets you to add all your files out there. And like I said, you want to keep this as your repository for every single file, everything to do about a project. So when a stakeholder sends you a picture or some text that they want to use on a website, you can add it to Confluence. And to save yourself a little bit of time so that you're not adding everything out there, you can create a file list. And this is a file list. So what it does is it allows the user or the client, stakeholder, whoever's giving you that information, they can actually drag and drop it onto the page, and then it shows up. It shows the name, when it was loaded, who loaded it, and it's just an easy way to automatically create a list, and then it also documents who added it and when they added it. So customizing your project landing page. So just about everything we've covered so far has, is for one main purpose, and that's to make it simple for your stakeholders and your team to get the information that they need. So another way to do this using the tools is to set up a project landing page or a home page for that project in Confluence. Every space automatically has one. It just depends what you want to do with it. So this way, when the stakeholders go to your space in Confluence, the first thing they see is the information that they're looking for. And you can customize it, however you like. This is one of the features that usually works pretty good. It tells you the status of all the tasks. There's a lot of built-in features with Confluence, and those are called macros. So the built-in features use macros. With macros, we can show the iframe, we can show the PDF, we can create that file list. These are all using things called macros. So this macro actually gives you a status of all the tasks in Jira. So you can do some pretty complex things with macros, and that would be, probably like a whole other webinar. But I wanted to show you some examples of what's possible once you get up to the higher level stuff. So what you're seeing on your screen right now uses a Jira filter and it uses a macro, and then it shows the status of every task, who the task is assigned to, and the way when a stakeholder looks at it, it gives them an overall view of the project. It tells you like how many tasks are completed or how many are closed, how many are in QA, how many of them are currently being worked on. Like you see like the in progress, the QA, whether it passed QA, whether there's feedback on it. You can even tell like how many of them haven't been started yet, and that would be like this new column or new row here. And then it gives you the total counts, and it breaks it up by users. There's multiple ways you can break this up depending how you want to define your macro and what's going to work best for your team. And like pretty much everything else I show you, this is automatically updated. So once the task status is changed, or if it changes in owners, this project landing page will automatically be updated. As a developer finishes something and sends it to QA, the counts are going to reflect the change in here. So this is a little bit more with the customizing the project landing page. So another feature you can add to it is a search bar. Now there's already a search bar in Confluence on the left-hand side, but let's say a stakeholder has access to multiple projects. It's going to search all of them. And depending on how savvy your stakeholder is, sometimes they can get a little confused, you know, be like, I was on this project, but it's showing me results for another project. So this makes it easier to kind of point them in the direction that they want to go to. So if they're on project ABC's landing page and they run something in the search bar, you can set it up so it only searches project ABC. So they're not going to get something from one of the other projects that shows up. It just eliminates any confusion that can come up. What else? So customizing reporting. So like I said, Jira or Confluence integrates with Jira. They both integrate together. This is just an example of one report that was created to let you see and track who's working on each task without going into Jira. And it gives you more details. Like we had the last one, this one where it tells you a count. This one gives you a little bit more details. So you can see Renan's working on, you know, deploy installment for the billing option. And those are the tasks, that's the task that he's working on. If he had multiple tasks, it would show up in there too. And you can get a report for each user, see what they're working on. I know if any of you are using like daily stand-ups or scrum meetings, anything like that, I use this a lot for that, just so I can follow up on them. Sometimes they might have like 2 or 3 tasks assigned to them. I can ask them about the status of each one. And I don't have to go into Jira to find out what they're working on. I can just load this up and view it. One other thing too about this report by user. I've also set it up for clients. So client has a hard time figuring their way around Jira, has a hard time with, you know, the boards in Jira. So I created this for him, and then I put his name on there. So let's say maybe it's not Kevin, but he's further down on this list, so I didn't make the screenshot. But his name could show up in here, and he can see if any tasks are assigned to him. That way he knows if one of the devs have a question for him or anything like that. You can customize the amount of notifications that you get with Jira and Confluence, but sometimes, you know, they still might feel like they're getting too many and they get a little confused. This just makes it a little bit easier for them, puts the information right in front of them. So this gets into some more of the complex stuff in there that you can do with Jira and Confluence, but I just wanted to give everyone an idea of what's possible. I won't go into the how-to. We can save that again for another webinar. But with the use of page labels and with the macros that I talked about earlier, you can group the information about each one of your projects together and create a dashboard out of it. So you can create, you can include like the various statuses of all your projects. You can have links to your documentation. You can show the current stage that your project's in. These little colors here, those are statuses. So you can set them red, green, blue, gray, whatever color you want to set those. I went with the basics just because they're pretty clear cut. Green means good, yellow means eh. Red, you know, might have some issues with that one. But it just makes it a clear indication of your dashboard, status of all your projects, every single part of your project. It also lets you to put any notes you have in there. So if you have some notes, you can create a note column in there, and it'll automatically update when you update the documentation for that project. And it kind of rolls it all up into this one. And so these are all my projects. I can see where I am with them, what I still need to do. If I'm like, for whatever reason, if I can't find the budget page, I can go in here and click on the budget link and get to the budget link. It also works well, you know, like I've pointed financing to this before too. You know, if they have questions about where my budget is, I can talk to financing, say, okay, hey, here's my dashboard. If you ever need to know where any of my project information is that financing might need, like the budget, You can click on it and it'll show you exactly where you need to go for which project you're looking for. So this is an example of one I made for myself, which has my project's information, but you can also create a similar dashboard for your entire PMO. So here's an example of a PMO dashboard. It has all the high level, the important high level information for the projects that for your entire company. So you've got projects, they roll up into your project dashboard, and then your project dashboards. If you've got multiple PMs with a project, each with their own project dashboard, you can roll that up into the PMO dashboard. This can include links to like the contracts. It'll tell you who the PM is on the project, gives you the status of it. You can't really see it on the screen cut or screen snapshot, but to the right, if you would scroll further on the right on the real page, you'd see like the status icons, the red, green, blue that red, green, yellow that I showed earlier. It lets you know who the account manager is, tells you who the project manager is. But the main purpose of this is to give your stakeholders or your executives all the answers that they need at a glance. If they want to drill down into a project, it has a link to the contract, links to any of the, it has a link to the project wiki, which is the Confluence page. It has a link to the project Jira page, so you can set them up so they want to look for further information. They have the ability to do that. They can drill down into the project as far as they need to go there. It's all right there in front of them. You just want to make it easy for people to find the information that they're looking for and find it quickly. And then if they can't get all their answers, from the dashboard, it does have the PM listed so they know who to reach out to. So hopefully I didn't overwhelm anyone with all the things you can do with Jira and Confluence while working from home or even in an office if you're there. I went over a lot of features at a very high level, but I also wanted to touch on how you can benefit from everything that I've shown you, whether you're working remote or if you'll be heading back to the office soon. Hopefully we will be, or people will be. So one of the things I hear most when people talk about why they don't like working from home is that they no longer have the ability to peek their head in someone's office and ask them a quick question. And that's great. So it works great for the person actually doing the peeking, but it's very disruptive to the person in the office working who now has to stop what they're doing. They switch gears, they're finding the answers to the questions that they've been asked. I read a study once that when a person who is like heads down, concentrating and really focused on something, when they're interrupted from their work, it takes them about 15 minutes to figure out where they were, get refocused and then to continue working. This means that with every interruption, every time someone peeks in our door, it takes us about 15 minutes to get back into what we were originally working on. This doesn't include the time it takes for us to actually answer those questions, look up any information that they might need if we don't know it off the top of our head. So that rough estimates of 15 minutes, of like answer time and 15 minutes to get back into our work, and then we've just lost a half an hour of work time. So having Confluence and Jira properly set up gives your stakeholders, your colleagues, even like your dev team, everybody on the team who has questions about the project, it gives them the ability to find the answers they're looking for on their own. If we make it easy for them by setting up, reporting, by giving them easy access to the tasks, by setting up the emails so they're automatically notified to them and tagging them in action items and in meeting notes, we can create their to-do list for them with open tasks and then create dashboards for users so that they can key in on their specific users. It just means a more productive day for everybody on that project. And that is it. So are there any questions? Anything anyone wanted me to answer or anything?
I think we have a couple questions in the Q&A section there. One is, would it make sense to use one tool independently of the other? Because you're talking about Jira and Confluence, and can they be used separately?
They can be used separately. I don't recommend it just because they work so well together, and you want to make sure that you have something for everybody on the team, whether it's the dev team, who's, like I said, is going to use Jira more often, or the stakeholders who will probably be more in Confluence than they will Jira. You want to make sure that everybody has what they need. So I definitely recommend using both of them and using them, connecting them together like we talked about at the beginning, just so that they can work together and you don't have to switch gears and switch applications in order to do something. Let me see.
Great.
Pro tips. I see there's a question about additional pro tips that you can share for those who are just getting started. There are a ton of videos out there. I know YouTube has a bunch of videos. There's a ton of things. So if you need to know, like if you're looking for how to do any of the things I talked about on this webinar, or trying to see if something else is possible to do, definitely Google it. There's a ton of how-to instructions, and YouTube has a lot of videos that will just walk you through piece by piece. And then what else do we have? Independently, we talked about that one. I think that's about it then. Any other questions? Oh, one more. Do stakeholders or team members ever resist the use of these tools? Yes. Yeah, and I think people have been burned too many times by being told to use a tool and then it doesn't do what they need it to do. And as somebody who's setting up Jira or setting up Confluence, you need to make it so that they have the ability to do find the information that they need and the ability to do the things that they want to do. You want to even if you're at the office, you want to make it so that it's easier for them to just sit at the desk and find the information they need on their own, rather than getting up and walking over to your office or your cube or whatever you're in and asking you the question. Giving them the information at the tip of their fingers just works out better for everybody involved. Any tips for overcoming objections or bringing naysayers on board? I go out of my way sometimes to point people to Confluence, especially at the beginning of a project. So, if they're looking for something and I can point them to a Google spreadsheet, Google spreadsheets are great, don't get me wrong, we use them all the time. I will go out of my way and make an iframe in Confluence and put the Google spreadsheet in that iframe so that you can view it from a Confluence page. Number one, because it puts all the information in Confluence, and then you don't have to have half the information in Confluence and remember links or bookmark other the Google spreadsheet or Google Doc, whatever it is you're referencing. And then it also gets the users used to going into Confluence. So, you want to build up that habit, especially at the beginning of a project, get them used to looking in Confluence. If they need something, oh, I'll go to Confluence and look up. So just I try to build those habits early in the project, and putting everything in the Confluence helps do that. And then sending them the link to the iframe, to that Google spreadsheet, which is already in Confluence, rather than sending them the link to the spreadsheet itself.